This video is about implied depth. When the artist begins, they have a flat sheet of paper that's two-dimensional. And the difficulty is, how do I make something two-dimensional seem three-dimensional? So, one of the things that's very important on implied depth is I can create the illusion of depth or space simply by doing these overlapping shapes. And when I look at overlapping shapes of any kind, as they go back in space, I'll make them seem smaller. Now it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 circles there, or semicircles. And by getting rid of lines, which are two-dimensional, I can make these circles seem to be more dimensional and moving back in space. Now, if I make these spheres seem as though they're moving back in space, I'm implying depth. However, when you look at this, obviously it's an illusion, and there aren't 9 circles, there's only 1. And your mind fills in that these are overlapping shapes. So one way to get depth is overlapping shapes. Another way to get depth is to think of it as a landscape. And pictures are rectangular because they're called an invisible window. Now, I could make a drawing any shape I wanted. It could be a circular shape, a triangular drawing, but we make rectangular shapes for drawings and canvases and frames because it's like looking through a window. Now, in representational art, or realistic art, we're looking through a window. Later, we'll talk about how certain artists, when they began working abstractly, rejected the idea that that was an invisible window and instead said, no, it's a flat two-dimensional object. So abstract art uses flat dimensional object, whereas a realistic artist sees this as an invisible window. Now you might see this as a blank if you were looking at a piece of paper, but it's actually a white rectangle. So an invisible window is when the picture plane, two-dimensional surface, seems blank or like glass and you're looking through it. One way to make it seem as though you're looking through a window is to have what's called a horizon line. A horizon line is very important in art because it is always your eye level. Now, I would like for you to experiment something. When you look out a window, I would like for you to close one eye and try to see the horizon where the earth and sky meet. And if you point at the horizon and then bring it back to your face, I'll show you. Hello. If you close one eye and point where the earth and sky seem to meet, it will come right here to your eye. Now, there you go. If you sit in your car and you have like a Porsche and you're very low to the ground, if you do the same thing, you'll see that even though you're low to the ground, it's always at eye level. So this horizon line suggests that's eye level. So try it when you're sitting in your car at a stop sign and see where the road appears to disappear on the horizon line. And you'll find that if you put your finger there and bring it straight up to your eye, it'll be always eye level. If I'm standing on a balcony on top of a building, that will be my eye level. So let's say I've got a palm tree at the beach, and the palm tree is well above my eye level, and I might have some sand dunes, and here's the water. Here's a pad. Okay. Here's some clouds. Now, this seems as though I'm standing at a normal height, looking out at the horizon line on the beach. If I'm lying down on the beach and my head is much lower than when it was standing up, there's my palm tree, Let's put a boat here for reference. I don't know why you'd sail on the ocean, but let's just go with it. Okay, if I now have a sailboat here, and I might still have a little bit of water, it's going to look as though I'm much lower and I'm either sitting or lying down. If my palm tree is outside the window in my hotel room, and I'm looking at a boat on the horizon, and here maybe I can see, I'm looking down and I'm seeing the water, and maybe I can even see some sand dunes. This is going to suggest that I'm very high, like very high up on a balcony. So what you want to do is when you're looking at a picture that's realistic, if it's a landscape, look at the edge of the picture plane, the two-dimensional surface, the canvas or the paper, and see how high or low that eye level has been set, that horizon line. And this will let you know whether or not the artist wants you to see it as though you're just standing up. If I have a very low horizon line, I could make it look like a 2-year-old was looking at this scene, because a 2-year-old's eye level is shorter. I could even make it look like an ant was looking at a scene. If I have an ant's view, the horizon line might be way down here on the picture plane with all this grass in the way. So, horizon line is always the eye level. Now, another way to imply depth is with linear perspective. And on linear perspective, I have a horizon line that is always at my eye level. This is going to be a very loose sketch of linear perspective. I'm not going to bother with using rulers and a lot of guidelines because I'm just giving you the idea of what happens in linear perspective. So let's say that I'm looking at a scene and I'm looking at a landscape. These are trees where the horizon meets, the earth meets the sky. And I might have some clouds that are coming in. And I've kind of framed this in my camera, or as an artist, I've framed it, okay? If this is eye level, that means that some guy standing right here, we'll call him Mr. Stickhead with a nice hat on, okay? So if Mr. Stickhead is sitting here, then, and Mr. Stickhead is, let's say he's 6 feet tall, okay? And here's his little arms and his shoulders, his waist, his legs. He's just kind of standing there. Well, that means that if I have somebody down right here, further back, this is also his eye level. Now, when I make these guys always at eye level, in a linear perspective, there's what we call a vanishing point. And the vanishing point is where things seem to disappear on the horizon. So I'm going to take that vanishing point and I'm going to make these guys line up. So this guy further back, his hat, is going to be this tall. And I can very quickly see how big or small to make something. A guy way back here, this will always, always, always be your eye level. And so this little dude is going to be this tall, way back here. Now let's say that these guys are leaning up against a fence. And if this is 6 feet tall, then this must be 3 feet tall. Let's see, that would be 3 feet tall. I'm going to make a almost 4 foot tall fence. So I'm going to come in here. It's like they're leaning up against the fence. And I'm going to put some fence rails in. And I'm going to make this fence, the fence looks a little tall, but we'll go with it. I can mathematically predict where these fall. Normally you would go from the top to to the middle to the bottom, from the top to the middle to the bottom, from the top to the middle of the bottom. And this will give me, I eyeballed it pretty well, that will give me the fence in perspective. So if this is a fence in perspective, and this fence is kind of tall at 4 feet, excuse me, I can put a tree over here. Now I want to have a tree that where the branches are not going to hit me on the head. So I'm going to suggest that this tree right here is about, well, the branch starts at about 7 feet, 8 feet tall. The tree is going outside my picture plane. This is my cropping for the camera, so to speak. Okay, so here's a tree with messy leaves. Okay. If I want to make all these trees, I'm going to make these trees planted in a row and they all branch here. That means that this tree planted back here will branch out at that point. And this tree way back here will branch out at this point. And I know that that branches over these guys' heads, so that is more than 6 feet. Now, if this guy is 6 feet wide and I want to have a path, this path, let's say the path is 6 feet wide, okay? So the path goes from here to here. So I'm going to create the illusion of a path next to these guys. So I come in here, and I'm going to suggest that the path is a little rocky. It's a dirt road. Now, as I come forward on this, you'll notice that I'm making darker and lighter and littler and bigger. I might put in a few rocks. There is another type of perspective that you will see in the next video called atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective basically says that as things get closer, they get more different, bigger, smaller, different marks, a few rocks, and as they go away, they get more and more similar. So this guy, in linear perspective, might be much more distinct I guess his arms are now down by his side. A sketch. This guy would be much more distinct, whereas this guy would be much more blurry. Well, I can even use these diagonal lines to show me how big clouds should be, because clouds go back in space as well. So if I create these lines right here, clouds in the distance will be that big. As they move forward, they'll be this big. And when they get up here, they'll be that big. So what happens here is that I can add a little shading to them. Maybe they're thunderclouds, I don't know. Okay, so there are 3 things you need for linear perspective. You need the eye level, which is the same thing as a horizon line. You have to set the horizon line first. You have a vanishing point where things seem to vanish. Vanishing point. And then you have these diagonals. These diagonals are called orthogonals. Now, sometimes you'll see these orthogonals as an orthographic drawing. It means that it's a drawing that uses those triangles. All right,